How's it going, everyone? Want to talk some PlayStation news and updates? I imagine that there's going to be a lot of announcements, a lot of reveals over the course of the next, let's put it at 3 months, but really over the course of the next month as Summer Game Fest is about to kick off and all of those summer events are going to be happening. And I think some of the games we're going to talk about at the end of this video might be showcased over the course of the next couple of months. And on top of that, there's been a lot of talk about this mythical PlayStation event that'll be happening in June. I want to talk a little bit about that as Jeff Grubb has a bit of an update. I will go over his exact post on Twitter, and then I will go over some of my speculation that I've been pretty open about as far as how I would personally handle it, just looking at the lay of the land and what they've got set forth. So we'll talk about that, and again, a couple of other notes on other games at the end of this video, Resident Evil 9 and the potential of a new BioShock game. But right off the bat, Jeff Grubb did tweet out PlayStation event in June. That's the entirety of what I can confirm. No specific dates. Not sure if it's a state of play or a big boy showcase, but I lean towards state of play. That's it. Anything else that people add is their own speculation. Remember that the idea that it's a state of play, that is him just leaning towards it. It's a guess, an informed guess, but still a guess. To me, okay, this is just my speculation. I talked about this in a previous video. I would personally do a state of play. Given the lay of the land and assessing every studio, maybe there's some surprise games in development, but I don't think it's time for a showcase on the basis that they don't have a lot of games that I think should be shown at this point. And some people are saying, why are you so focused about first party? First party is a big deal for a state of play or a showcase. Really, for a showcase, it's a big deal that you have some first party presentations. It doesn't have to be all first party. We've all said this. First party doesn't have to be the only thing at a showcase, but there has to be standout first party games, and then yeah, show some third party stuff as well. But first party absolutely needs to be there. I would argue the next major state of play, first party should be there as well. But the next major event, I think, should be built around Sorrow's gameplay. I think that's the major thing that you could show off that you've got ready to go, and that's a game that's probably going to come out in early 2026. The issue with building an event around the Sorrows gameplay reveal is Sorrows is not that big of a game. I think when you talk about PlayStation Showcase, that sets the expectation that you're going to be showing some major games like Marvel Wolverine gameplay, and you could show Wolverine gameplay. However, I don't think now's the time to show Wolverine gameplay because that game probably at the earliest is going to come out in fall of 2026. I would rather that game be showcased in the summer of next year where it would be time to do a showcase. I think if you do the big Wolverine rollout next year, only a few months before it's ready to be released, I think the timing works out much better. I think getting a Wolverine update after it's already been revealed for 4 years and then just being told, okay, you'll get to play it a year and a half from now, I think that would leave some people disappointed. Sorrows, on the other hand, if it's coming out February, March, April, I think people could accept, okay, big gameplay showcase on that game, we'll get to play it early next year. I think people would be happy with that. And then ultimately, look at the lay of the land about everything else. Remember, all of these studios are fried because of live service games. You've got Guerrilla Games. Maybe Horizon 3 is in development, but I highly doubt that's in 2026. At earliest, that's 27. You do have Horizon Online. And then there are games like Fair Game coming from Haven Studios. And then you've got other live service games you can showcase like Marathon and whatnot. But as far as new narrative-based single-player games, there's the rumbling of Santa Monica having a new game in development. That's the one that's off of left field that could be there. I get that Naughty Dog has a second game in development, but Intergalactic is going to be their first game, and that game's not coming out till 2027, and I doubt that we're going to see more. It's not time to show more. I would argue that it wasn't time to really reveal that game last year, but nonetheless, you got to do your garbage reveal trailers that tell us absolutely nothing about a game, give us no gameplay. Oh, don't worry, guys, Intergalactic has the deepest gameplay that Naughty Dog has ever done. Why didn't we get a gameplay trailer then to showcase that gameplay, and we just got a CG trailer that tells us absolutely nothing? You guys know how I feel about CG trailers. Hopefully less of that these days when it comes to new IPs. That's why I wasn't big on the Sorrows trailer either. But, you know, outside of Sorrows, I do see there being a lot of emphasis on maybe a couple remasters. There's the talk of Infamous Second Son, given that that was removed from PlayStation Plus, but that's a lot of accessory stuff that it's not worthwhile to build a showcase out of that. I would say do a high quality state of play. You set expectations right, you hopefully over deliver. Maybe you got something like a God of War remastered collection, a Resistance, I don't know, but at some point as well, you gotta start showing off these live service games. And I think the perception of PlayStation live service games are so low right now that if you did a showcase, expectations were already gonna be high, and then you start dropping like fair game gameplay trailers, people are gonna be like, nah, get this crap out of here. Whereas, you know, a state of play that's gonna set expectations right, where if you show a fair game gameplay trailer, if you do some marathon gameplay, if you even, I don't even think people would be that excited for Horizon Online, just because, again, people are so down on PlayStation from a live service standpoint. But at some point, if these games are gonna come out, you have to start revealing them. You have to start showing gameplay for them, and I just think when you do a showcase, you should put the fair games and the Horizon Onlines even and the marathons, those shouldn't be near there, because I just think right now the perception is really bad of PlayStation Live Service that you don't want to do a showcase that has a big emphasis on those games. That's my 2 cents. I think a state of play where you do some brief trailers, that's one thing, but for a showcase, I wouldn't be doing that now. That's how I would personally structure it. I would do a state of play this year. Next year, hopefully the Ben Studios of the world, maybe Blue Point, maybe Naughty Dog can show off intergalactic gameplay a little bit more. Maybe Wolverine can have its big gameplay blowout then, but I don't, like, based on just assessing the lay of the land, I feel like it's not the time for a showcase, because you're not gonna have enough first-party output. Yes, you can always rely on third-party, and that's fine to have some third-party stuff, but there's just not enough first-party on games that are gonna come out in the relative near future, at least from what I am assessing. And even if you want to say, oh, you have this remastered collection and that remastered collection, I think remastered collections work as a nice accessory. You still need some major gameplay of new first-party games that are gonna get people excited, and then again, the third-party stuff can be the accessories and whatnot, and can also be there. Even Showcase of 23, that show was pretty terrible, but you still have Spider-Man 2 as the big blowout gameplay reveal at the end of that show. Saros is the one game that I would say could fit that criteria of a game that's coming out somewhat soon, but again, I just don't view that game at the level of a Spider-Man 2, and you could say they could do a Yote gameplay demo. I just feel like at this point in Yote, we have the release date, we've seen gameplay, you don't really need to sell a lot of people more on that, and it wouldn't be that big of a reveal at this stage. The game's like 4 months away. Spider-Man 2, back when they did the Showcase of 23, we had no gameplay of that game, and that was the first we saw of that game, and that's how I am assessing things. But I imagine Saros would be the big game you build the next PlayStation event around, and again, I just think a showcase would set that game up to be a disappointment, because people don't know Housemarque like that. It's not like Returnal was this juggernaut of a game, even though the people that played it liked it. It wasn't this juggernaut of a game. But that's my 2 cents on that. We'll see how they go about it, but some sort of PlayStation event in June, and I could see it being a state of play in June and then a showcase maybe in September, October. I could see that being how they handle it, because if you remember in 2021, I believe that's how it was structured. They did a state of play in June, and then the showcase was in September of that year, and that was the one that, if you want to look at the last showcase that people loved, that was it. Showcase of 21, and that showcase everyone really gravitated towards, and it had a lot of first-party emphasis. Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, all off the top of my head, all got presented at that event. Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine were CG trailers, but God of War Ragnarok got a gameplay trailer. GT7, I believe, was a gameplay trailer. KOTOR was like a game that people thought was gonna come out, so that was like a huge reveal as well, and that had PlayStation 5 exclusivity baked into it. So there was a lot of titles at that showcase, and if you want to do something at that level, I just don't feel like we have those games ready as far as first party is concerned. But that's my 2 cents on that. Alright, moving on from that, I do want to cover a couple of other news notes. Resident Evil 9 was originally a big open world multiplayer game with Leon and Jill However, it did undergo a major reboot in 2021, so thank the high heavens that will not be happening. New info suggests, and this is coming from Dust Golem on Twitter, according to him, development for Resident Evil 9 actually started way back in early 2017, right after Resident Evil 7 launch. RE7 sales weren't met as far as expectations are concerned, so apparently after that, they decided to go in a new direction. A massive open world multiplayer game, and the early concept had Leon and Jill as the main characters taking on a story set on a fictional island inspired by Singapore. This was a big departure for the usual Resident Evil formula, and was meant to be the opposite of RE7. They decided to go with that, however, they hit reset in 2021, giving RE9 a heavy reboot. I think some of that would have been, you know, after RE7 came out, that game generated a lot of sales. RE2 Remake did incredibly well, and then Village was scheduled to come out, and I think that had quite a lot of buzz. And let's be honest, open world multiplayer Resident Evil 9, that sounds like absolute disastrous. That would have been terrible, and I'm sure if it was, could you imagine if Resident Evil 9 was revealed now? That game ultimately was continued to be developed, and it was this nonsense live service game with microtransactions and things of that nature. People would have been vehemently upset. They would have been completely crapping all over it, especially with all of the momentum that Resident Evil has right now after the success of the RE4 remake, after Village's success. And this is one of those franchises that over time I think has just cultivated even more and more interest after so many stellar releases back to back to back to back. You know, if you're talking about reigniting interest in a franchise after Resident Evil was in a bit of a lull in the early 2010s and mid 2010s, but after Biohazard, after Village, the remakes, man, they've done a phenomenal job of reigniting interest into the franchise. And what better way to kill interest than doing something like a multiplayer open world title? But thankfully, it looks like that won't be happening. Resident Evil 9, the rumbling is Leon will be a main character, or the main character, and that would be incredibly exciting. I mean, Leon is, I think, the favorite amongst most people as far as Resident Evil characters go. You know, I like Chris and whatnot, but Leon's my guy, and obviously with Resident Evil 4 being such a heralded game, that does make a lot of sense. But hopefully we see the reveal of RE9 fairly soon, and the rumbling has it that it's gonna be releasing in 2026. I could easily see at a June PlayStation event, Resident Evil 9 getting revealed at that. Resident Evil 4 Remake was revealed at a State of Play, and it seems like, you know, PlayStation and Resident Evil have always had a solid relationship, and Capcom, I should say, so could easily see that happening, Resident Evil 9 getting revealed at the June event. And that's a great, like, third-party reveal that people will get excited for, and will give you a lot of points to have that, but still, it works as a good complementary to the first-party titles that should be the star of the State of Play and Showcase events. At least that's how I feel a PlayStation State of Play should be handled, or a showcase, however they decide to go about it. Yeah, have third-party emphasis, showcase their games. They did Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eaters reveal at the showcase of 23. Have games like that. That's great, but you need to have emphasis on first-party as well. It's a happy balance between the two, and first-party should have the majority of the emphasis because it's a PlayStation showcase showcasing PlayStation games. And yes, RE9 is a PlayStation title, but it'll be available on all platforms. You guys get the idea. I just think you need a balance of both of those, and it's not like it needs to be majority first party, but you need at least a couple of high quality first party games. But I digress on that. And then lastly, 2K Games is reportedly preparing an announcement for the BioShock franchise. According to information told to MP First, 2K is preparing an announcement related to the BioShock franchise, but at this point we do not know exactly when it'll happen. Some of the information suggests it'll happen fairly soon, most likely before the end of this summer. At this point, the announcement itself isn't clear. It could be BioShock 4 or an upcoming Netflix movie. Hopefully it's BioShock 4, because I think that's what people are actually wanting as far as BioShock is concerned. I am curious though. BioShock is one of those games that if it comes out and it's released at a $70, $80 price point, you know, it's not a super lengthy game. The campaigns are incredibly compelling. BioShock Infinite was one of my favorite games of that era, of that, you know, early 2010s period, but I just wonder if people would gravitate towards a new BioShock at a $70, $80 price point. But that's something we can cross that bridge when we get there. Let's get the reveal going first, because BioShock has been MIA for so long, and it would be interesting to see how the game would be handled regardless. But that'll do it for me. Again, as far as PlayStation is concerned, there does look to be some sort of event in June. Hopefully they have a solid event, and again, I would do a State of Play, over deliver on a State of Play. set expectations right. I think a showcase would get people really excited. And then ultimately, even if you get Wolverine gameplay at a showcase, if it's coming out in a year and a half, are people going to get that excited for it if it's so far away? I think you do. A state of play, you build it around Sorrows. Hopefully you have a release window ready to go on that, maybe early 2026, given that Returnal came out in early 21, so that would be 5 years, and generally that's the amount of time. And then maybe you get some remastered collections, you do a Resident Evil 9, and then ultimately, you guys, as much as you guys hate to hear it, you gotta start pushing some of these live service games. If they're gonna come out, you gotta start pushing them a little bit, so I think that'll be an emphasis as well. Ready to see some fair game gameplay, you guys, so be ready for that. Resident Evil 9, thankfully, it won't be an open world multiplayer game, but yeah, that would have been kind of disastrous. BioShock announcements coming from 2K Games here shortly. Hopefully, it is BioShock 4. That'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.